Hello and welcome to my book channel. I want to do today a cheeky little jar chooses my next read moment. If you haven't seen any of these, I've put every book on my bookshelves that I haven't already read in this jar, and I pull one randomly and have to read whatever it comes up. If I get to a certain point and I decide I really don't like it, the idea is to just donate it or take it to your used bookstore and get it off your shelves, because we don't need a bunch of books we do not want to read and will never read on our bookshelves, right? I drew the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver, so that was interesting for me. Of course, it has to be one of the longest books that's in this jar, probably a top 5 longest book in the jar, naturally, which is good actually that it asked me to finish it, because if the jar didn't tell me to, I think I would have kept putting it off eternally. So, Poisonwood Bible, I had already started and read 50% of this book previously, a long time ago. So long ago, in fact, that I pulled it down from my shelf and I still had the bookmark in it, right around 50%. I pulled out the bookmark and it had a Neil Gaiman quote on it. Which was surprising. So at the very least, I read the first 50% of this book before Neil Gaiman fell from grace. That dates it a little, for sure. Now you know. I had initially read the first 50% with a lot of enthusiasm. I was really loving it. I love Barbara Kingsolver. I think she's such a good writer. But I put it down because it was so depressing. So that's why I put it down. And so, of course, the jar could sensed in my energy depression. And it decided that, you know what? In fact, let's feed into the depression and let's continue that. I'm starting it over. There's a few books that are in this jar that are 50% of the way or so finished, that if I draw them, I have to start them over, I've decided. Especially like this. I haven't read it in a very long time. I want to give it the time and effort and energy it deserves and read it more slowly and more thoughtfully from the beginning. So I say all that. I already started it. I am starting from scratch. I've already read the first 100 pages or so, and I'm doing actually a little bit of annotating as well, because this feels like a book. It just feels like it's worth reading slowly and thoughtfully. So, color-coded my tabbies I always do blue tabs for quotes, just quotes that I like that don't fit into any of the other categories. I have pink for motherhood, because that is a huge theme in this book. I've got the purple is for Christianity, Christian justification for colonization. So there's lots of Bible quotes that, at least when used in the context of this book, you can see the sort of justification for colonization. And then I have the orange tabbies are for non-westernized knowledge, because I think maybe I should start with telling you what the book is about. Should I have started with that? A big theme of the book is the colonizers disregard and don't value the knowledge of the people they're colonizing. So especially in this book, which is about a family, it's a father, a mother, and their 4 daughters. The father is a pastor, and he has signed up to do sort of a mission, but in an especially remote village of the Congo. It takes place in the 50s, so the sort of historical context, which is right around a time when they had a sort of revolution, and they tried to basically take back their land from the Dutch, I want to say. I know, because I've read half this book before, I know it gets into it in the next 100 pages or so I will have a better memory of the historical context when I get there. And I would love to give the actual specifics when I do remember. But it's this family has signed up to do a mission sort of in a shady way. He only sort of has permission to go over here and basically uproots his whole family and takes them over to the Congo, where they are supposed to live for 1 year. And if I remember correctly, it ends up being more than that. So there's definitely this factor of the father character. He doesn't value the people who live there, and he wants to make them fit into his view of life and how it should be lived. And then there's these 4 daughters who all have very distinct personalities, and the mother who has a chapter written from her perspective at the beginning of every part, and then the rest of the chapters are split up between the 4 daughters. So I am definitely recalling that it is sad. I am really surprised by how much I remember. I think the imagery book is so vivid because I'm rereading it and I'm like, yeah, I remember. I literally feel like I've been here before. I can picture it so clearly in my mind. And I think that's just something that Barbara Kingsolver does really, really well in general. And she does a really good job of writing about people and their connections to a certain place and sort of how your environment impacts your culture. She does an amazing job of that in this book. She does an amazing job of writing really distinct point of views because each chapter is written from the different daughters' perspectives. They're labeled, it tells you which daughter it is, but you don't even really need those labels to know which daughter it is because she does such a distinct writing between them, which is also something I think is really impressive. Another thing she does really well is write children perspectives. That is something that she does extremely well in Demon Copperhead. I have that right here. She does honestly a phenomenal job of it in Demon Copperhead, and it's because it's much later in her career, you can really see how she's developed in her writing abilities between the Poisonwood Bible and Demon Copperhead. There was one other thing I wanted to praise her for. No, maybe not. I love Barbara Kingsolver. I want to get that out of the way. I have read now 3 of her books. I'm actually currently reading a nonfiction essay collection from her, so I really like her stuff. I just have one, maybe it's not even really a complaint about this book specifically. It's more so just the fact that I think I would almost prefer to read a book about the Congo written from the perspective of someone from the Congo. I think that it could be valuable to have this sort of colonizer's perspective of this period of time of the Congo, but I also think, do we really need more of that, So while it is an excellent book and it really strongly condemns colonization, it still is a little bit funny that it's written from the perspective of some American lady, right? That's my introduction. Already maybe a little longer than it should have been. I want to check back in. Around halfway, maybe right around where I left off. I didn't note specifically where I left off, but I think I'll know. Give a little check-in, see how I'm feeling. I think that, at this point, it's basically 100% guarantee I'm not getting rid of this book. I think this book is really, really good. She's such an incredible writer. So now I just have to finish it. It should be not too hard of a task, but has proven to be difficult for me in the past. And I will check back in with you when I have reached halfway. I've done it! I am officially 2 pages past the previous location that I read to in the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver, which is exactly 51% of the way through. So I really made it exactly half the way through, and then I was like, I'm quitting. I feel like the first thing that is very important, because I was very wrong in basically everything I said about the historical context in my last clip, because they hadn't gotten into it yet. And I remembered the vague information, but not the specifics. I'm gonna sneeze 1 second. No sneeze. That probably means that this is gonna be an ongoing issue for this entire clip. This is me on allergy medication, by the way. So, not everyone can be as powerful as me. Okay, the historical context that I was completely wrong about. The book starts in 1959. Hello, I'm jumping in really quickly because the first time I did this, I did a really bad job of explaining, and I also feel like I didn't even do an accurate job of explaining. So here is the more official explanation of the historical context. The Congo was colonized by Belgium starting officially in the early 1900s, but definitely before that as well. They were using the people of the Congo and the resources of the Congo to sell, and they were selling diamonds and rubber particularly, and then using the people of the Congo basically as slave labor in the diamond and the rubber plantations. It's actually one of like the top reasons I asked for not a diamond ring in my engagement ring, actually, but that's unrelated. The Belgians did some like pretty heinous stuff while they were in charge there, not only just using the people as slave labor and like using the natural resources of the Congo to make themselves money, but they did some just evil things while they were in charge. One of the like very famous things they did was chopping off hands of the workers who didn't have enough output at the end of the day, which I had a whole bit about how that is stupid because you need workers to have hands, which is true, but also it's primarily evil. So they were doing that and, you know, just stuff like that. And then in 1960, they decided to abruptly pull out of control and allow the Congo to have an election and elect someone that they wanted. But they didn't take any time to do a peaceful transition of power, and they had previously been holding the Congo people down basically by not allowing them to get educations and not letting them be involved in the government in any way. So it was probably bound to fail, and that was probably intentional. And in 1960, the Congo people elected Patrice Lumumba in a democratic election. He was their chosen leader. So that's going on at the beginning of this book, is Patrice Lumumba has been elected, or he gets elected while the Price family is doing their mission in the Congo. So there's just sort of the unrest of this transition and of them like sort of kicking out the white people. It's an oppressive feeling that's hovering over the Price families, particularly because they're sort of in danger the whole time they're there. Patrice Lumumba was only in charge for like 5-6 months before he was captured and killed by, we'll just call him a usurper, a Congo usurper who was paid by the US. He was basically bought by the US so that the US could put someone else in charge that they wanted in charge. It was like a CIA operation. So the whole situation it sucks really bad. And I think the book does a really good job of feeding you this information in a natural feeling way where you feel like you're understanding the situation without the book like very deliberately and explicitly explaining everything to you. So yeah, I think Barbara Kingsolver does a great job at relaying this information, and it's an insane story, and it's one of the many stories of the CIA getting involved in smaller countries' governments when they really probably shouldn't be. And actually another Barbara Kingsolver book that I have read does this. It's Animal Dreams, also talks a little bit about the CIA's involvement in Venezuela. So it's obviously something that Barbara is interested in. So, okay, back to me in my purple shirt. I think I got a much clearer and much more concise run through of the history in this clip. So hopefully that's okay. It's really tough to read. And I definitely was remembering, especially around like 30 to 40% of the way through, I was like, this is why I stopped reading this book. It is tough. It's tough to get through, for sure, for me. Anyways, not only is the historical situation like a big bummer to learn about, it really makes me mad, really mad and sad also. I think generally and intentionally, the situation within the family is a bit of a mirror of the colonization of the country on a very small scale. There's like layers, metaphorical parallels drawn between this family and the situation in the Congo. There's a parrot that also is sort of a representative metaphorical entity for the oppression in the Congo. There's a lot going on, and the problem is, like, it's so good and so well written that it affects me deeply, which is a compliment, also not a compliment, because it sucks to read a little bit. It would be more fun to read if I was in like a super well, I don't know. Do you really want to read something like this when you're in a happy, jolly state of mind? I don't know if I would either. So maybe it's fitting into my current vibe of I'm not feeling very happy and jolly at the moment. I'm definitely going to finish it this time, though. I'm absolutely breezing through it. It's only been a couple days, and for me, that's pretty good. I'm already halfway through. Yesterday, I read 100 pages, almost in a single sitting, because it's very arresting. It's very engaging. And you just need to know what's happening, because the atmosphere, it's oppressive, so good. You just feel like you're at the edge of your seat. You're like, I gotta figure out what's gonna happen, because this situation is so bad for everybody involved. A huge shout out to Kingsolver for her ability to write something that feels so bad to read. Good for her. Some more just comments on the writing. I think it's really fun to read the different daughters' perspectives. There's one that's a very young daughter, and the way that she's written is it's adorable, it's cute, and she has very unique observations, and she misspells words all the time, but you know exactly what word she means because it's like phonetic misspellings. And I saw Barbara Kingsolver mention in a like blog post that she didn't take into account the difficulty of translating this book when she wrote it, and that's hilarious, because translating this book into another language would be a nightmare. One of the daughters is obsessed with palindromes, and so she's constantly saying a sentence forward, saying a sentence backwards. I cannot imagine trying to translate this, especially into, like, Chinese. Do they do palindrome in China? So I definitely want to just sing this book's praises for all of those things. It's really well written. You really feel like you're there, and you feel like, I have to escape. I have to get out of here. This is really bad the whole time you're reading it. So it puts you in fight or flight, I feel like, at least for me. So if that sounds appealing to you, you should definitely pick it up. I do stand by, I would love to read a book by a person from the Congo. You know, it's a little different from a book that's just like almost fetishizing or othering the people of the Congo, because this really centers them as people who have their own knowledge and their own complexity, and that we haven't given them the credit they deserve historically. I still would love to read a book if you know, whoever's watching this, if there is anyone, if you have a book that you know of from the Congo, I would love to read something from the source. But I do still think that this is a valuable addition to the discussion, because it is written from a white family's perspective, but the messaging of it is very strongly about this white family's perspective is so narrow that they really don't understand the world as deeply as they should. So I would love to discuss further if anybody has thoughts. Me and my potentially 1 to 2 viewers. That's where I'm at, halfway through. I'm hoping to finish relatively soon, but I'm traveling this weekend, and I am not bringing this book on an airplane. Nope, I will not be reading this book on an airplane. That sounds terrible. It's too sad. Actually, I just had a little bit of a change of heart. I just thought about it a little, and this is risky. This is a risky choice, but I might let the jar choose. The jar is going to choose a fun book, hopefully, to read as our second book that we can start while we're traveling. Okay, jar, don't fail me. Something fun. Please pick something fun. The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. Okay, maybe not ideal, but purely because I don't like bringing a hardcover with me when I travel, but The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. She is the author of Hamnet, which just saying that is making me laugh out loud because I just went and saw the movie. I mean, not just. I went and saw the movie in December, and it legitimately, I cried until I was sick watching the movie. But to be fair, I don't remember crying while reading the book. Trust and believe there were worse choices in that jar for what I could have picked. I'm really contemplating because I could just not put this in the video and you wouldn't know. But this wouldn't be terrible. My only concern with this as an airplane book is that I remember Hamnet not being like bingeable. You know, when you're on an airplane, you want to be binging a read because you're sitting there you're stuck for 3 hours on your flight. And you want something that just keeps you absolutely engaged for 3 hours. But let me tell you what it's about real quick. Florence, the 1550s. Lucretia, third daughter of the Grand Duke, is comfortable with her obscure place in the palazzo, free to wonder at its treasures, observe its clandestine workings, and devote herself to her own artistic pursuits. But when her older sister dies on the eve of her wedding to the ruler of Ferrara, Modena and Reggio, Lucretia is thrust unwittingly into the limelight. The Duke is quick to request her hand in marriage, and her father just as quick to accept on her behalf. Having barely left girlhood behind, Lucretia must now make her way in a troubled court whose customs are opaque and where her arrival is not universally welcome. Perhaps most mystifying of all is her new husband himself, Alfonso. Is he the playful sophisticate he appeared to be before their wedding? The aesthete, happiest in the company of artists and musicians? Or the ruthless politician before whom even his formidable sisters seemed to tremble? As Lucretia sits in constricting finery for a painting intended to preserve her image for centuries to come, one thing becomes worryingly clear. In the court's eyes, she has one duty, to provide the heir who will shore up the future of the Ferrarese dynasty. Y'all, I can't include that. I'm mispronouncing like every word. I don't speak Italian. It's based on a real historical figure who I believe dies pretty tragically and early and young. This is another really good pull from the jar though, honestly, because I bought this like new. It's a hardcover. I never buy a brand new hardcover book, but I did with this because I was excited to read it, and it was like 3 years ago now. I can check. Let's see. Yeah, this book came out in 2022, so 4 years ago. So great pull from the jar. I absolutely will be reading this next. The jar knows, I know that you might be laughing, but this jar is sentient, and it knows that I want to read a depressing book written by a white lady. Catch me at the airport reading The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I don't know if that's a improvement over Poisonwood Bible or not. But my goal will be to read both of these books for this video. I actually want to give one other update because I need you, whoever you are, I need you to hold me accountable, okay? I'm working on the Olga sweater, if you're familiar, by Petite Knit. And right now I've got this much of it, which it's going to like basically the bottom of my rib cage almost, which is pretty close to where I want it, honestly. So I need to do like a couple more inches of the bottom. And my hope, this is maybe a crazy goal, but I want to have that finished by the end of this video. So I'll let you know if I'm achieving that or not. But here's the sweater. It's looking really good. The Olga sweater is just, everyone I've seen looks satisfying. Those stripes are so satisfying. Please hold me accountable. If I don't, you can take me out into the street and guillotine me. All right, so I will see you again when I have made some progress on the Poisonwood Bible. Wish me luck. I'm just realizing there's something that is not a spoiler that is very clearly stated in the beginning of this book, and that is that one of the daughters, it seems like one of the daughters is going to die. that is heavily implied at the very beginning of this book. So I was going to say I'm hoping for a really positive outcome, but the foreshadowing is really unclear. It could be literally any of the daughters. I don't know yet which one. And it's going to be sad. So I will check back in with you, I guess, once I know, because my hope is to finish the book before I speak again. I'm back and I've officially done it. I have completed the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. Feels good. It feels really good to check it off my list after having it sit on my shelves haunting me for the past few years. So thank you to the jar for picking it and forcing me to read it. I needed that encouragement. I think this book was really good. It's really well written. It's really interesting. It has really complex themes and ideas. I just think I really preferred the first half to the second half, which this is partially a me problem more so than a her problem because I read the first half twice. So because I really preferred the first half, I feel like I read it the first time and was thinking I can't wait to see what happens in the second half, and then I reread the first half and basically built up the second half in my head a lot, I think. And it really went in a way I did not expect it to. It just wasn't as interesting to me as I felt like it could have been. Especially the last 150 pages or so, I was like, okay, like it really lost momentum for me. So I was not going to read this on the airplane, but at that halfway mark, I was so invested that I decided, okay, I'm just going to bring it with me. I'm like so locked in and I really want to know how this ends. So I decided to just bring it with me. I read it on the airplane. It was fine. It's not a great airplane book, but it was still really good because I was just so invested and I had to know how it ends. So I powered through on the airplane. And I read like all of the really exciting stuff on my flight out. And then I had about 150 pages left. And I was like, what are we going to do with the rest of this book? And for me, it really it petered off big time in that last 150 pages in like just sort of plot. The like mystery of the book at that point is solved. Everything that you've basically been reading for at that point is solved. And then you have 150 pages to go. And I just don't love that format. I don't think that was in service of this book in general. I honestly think reworking it to end it a little sooner for me would have worked. Like it would have had a lot more impact that way, personally. Overall, I still would say it's a really, really well done book. I think that Demon Copperhead, her latest book, is better. I think it's just tighter. She's just had a lot more time to improve, and I think it's really tight and clean. Demon Copperhead never feels like it goes longer than it's supposed to, and I feel like the Poisonwood Bible felt at a certain point like she just didn't know how to finish it, and she just kept going. The setting, the tension, the just feeling of dread is so strong and so excellent in the first half of this book. So it's honestly worth reading just for that, in my opinion. And I think that the ideas that it's exploring are totally worth exploring as well. So I have some final thoughts also on my previous claims about the fact that we don't need a book from the colonizer's perspective, as I have called it. This book is very clearly written for an American audience. That is the audience. That's who this book is written for. And it does a really good job of helping you as an American person understand the perspective of what's going on. I know can be difficult when you're reading a book that's sort of outside of your normal perspective. It's very valuable to have that perspective for the people who understand that perspective, but it can also feel a little bit like you're not fully getting everything if you're reading from outside who it's written for, the target audience. So as a starting off point for an American person learning about the Congo, I think this is a really, really solid way to get started. It definitely helps put specifically an American perspective in the Congo, and one of the huge focuses of the book is the difference in perspectives and the different ways that a Congo person and a person from America see the world, and how neither of them is wrong, but neither of them is either completely right. And the book is very hard on American involvement in these African countries and the colonization of these countries. So it's at no point is it being forgiving to the American people. I'm not sure I perfectly portrayed my thoughts on that, but I think you get the idea. I think it's good. And a solid addition to books that are willing to discuss the situation that went down in the Congo in the 20th century. I want to finish up with a little rating. I rate books based on sort of a 2-point scale. So there's an excellence rating, 1 to 5 stars, and an enjoyment rating, 1 to 5 stars. The excellence rating for me is more about the craft of the book, how it's written. Is it doing anything unique and unusual? Is it trying to push boundaries? Is it a book that will have sort of staying power as a piece of literature, or in 5 years will it already be extremely out of date? Those are the things I think of for excellence. And then enjoyment is more about like, what's the content of the book? Is it fun to read? Is it a page turner? Are you really invested in figuring out the plot? Or is it the kind of book that's really thin on plot and really thin on excitement, which is a lot of the books I read. So things I also take into account for enjoyment would be something like, are the themes really heavy? Are the events going on in the book really heavy? So I think for the Poisonwood Bible, I would give it a solid 4 stars for excellence. I would say, for me, a 4-star excellence book is a book that might have won some awards at the time of its publication. It's pretty critically well received, and I think it's doing really interesting things with the perspective of the different characters. It's doing a really, really good job of having extremely distinct perspectives of the characters, and especially in the first half, the tension and atmosphere is immaculate. It's so well done. It might have been closer to 5 stars if I had felt more in those last 150 pages, for me personally. And then on an enjoyment standpoint, this is hard because it's sad. Like, the content of the book is really sad, and I stopped reading it the first time because it made me depressed. So it's definitely going to be low on enjoyment for that, but there are bits and pieces that are really delightful. Specifically, some of the chapters written from the perspective of the youngest daughter early on are hilarious. Like, this book also made me laugh out loud. Overall, there are definitely moments of joy and warmth. And I also think that the tension early on in the book does make it a bit of a page turner for a little while, because you really want to know how this family is going to basically get out of this terrible situation. So I think I put enjoyment like right in the middle, right at a 2.5. I think it's sad, but there is a lot of other stuff going on that makes it still very fun and exciting to read at times. So a great choice from the jar overall, and I'm honestly so glad it made me read this, because I've been meaning to for years now. And same thing with the book I'm about to start, which is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. So I'm going to dive into that, and I will, of course, update you when I have reached halfway. Hello, it's me again. It's been about 24 hours. I have read the first 100 pages of The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. First of all, look at how big this book is, like next to my head. It's so giant. I've read 94 pages so far, and I'm really not in the mood to read this. As of now, I'm very bored by this book. I wish I had read it when I first bought it, like 3 years ago. I think I would have been more in the mood for it at that time. But right now, I'm just not that interested. I do want to quickly make some corrections to what I said in the previous clip where I was talking about this book, because I thought it was about this lady who died in childbirth, and that is not true. She is a real historical figure. Her full name is very Italian, and I don't know how to pronounce it. This is the little historical note. It's like before the book even starts. It says, in 1560, 15-year-old Lucretia de Cosimo de' Medici left Florence to begin her married life with Alfonso II d'Este, Duke of Ferrara. I'm sorry to any Italians out there for my pronunciation. Less than a year later, she would be dead. The official cause of her death was given as putrid fever, but it was rumored that she had been murdered by her husband, which does sound exciting, I think. But the first 100 pages of this book, to me, have been incredibly dull. And I think it's well written, and Maggie O'Farrell is a really good writer. I think it's just more the mindset I'm in right now. I do not want to read this. So I'm a bit torn about giving it away because that is the goal of this video. But this specific book, there is a time and a place where I might be interested in reading it. So for now, I'm going to keep it, but I'm not going to finish it for this video. But I am going to pull another book, and hopefully it's something I'm a little bit more interested in reading right now. Okay, let's see what we draw instead. One second, let me show you my dog. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the glimpse into the life of my dog. He achieves levels of cozy unknown to mankind every single day, and I wish that was me. But without further ado, let's pick our next book. Okay, I'm nervous. I'm very nervous. It could be anything. I said I wanted a different vibe, a vibe shift, and I can't think of much more that would feel like more of a vibe shift. Well, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I'm not a fantasy reader, really. I read a little bit, but not much. And I have not dipped my toe into romantasy at all. I'm pretty confident it's not for me, but my mom read it for her book club, or maybe just for fun, and she had a copy and she gave it to me. And so I've had it on my shelves and it's been kind of staring at me. The jar wants what it wants, I guess. So if you're not familiar, which I would be pretty surprised, I'm like really, really late on this bandwagon. A Court of Thorns and Roses is, I'll just read the back. When 19-year-old huntress Feyre kills a wolf in the woods, a terrifying creature arrives to demand retribution. Dragged to a treacherous magical land she knows about only from legends, Feyre discovers that her captor is not truly a beast, but one of the lethal immortal fairies who once ruled her world. At least, he's not a beast all the time. A little heads up, I have heard extensive, exhaustive spoilers for this book, so I think basically exactly what happens in this book and in the future ones. But I don't think that's going to have that strong of an effect of my enjoyment in this book personally, because the plot I don't think is what I'm worried about not liking about this book. It's definitely the writing that I'm not so sure I'll love. So, all right, let's do this. I've been meaning to read this for years, and no time like the present, I guess. So I'm putting down the marriage portrait, and I'm going to start instead A Court of Thorns and Roses. I will see you at halfway. Hello, hello! I'm coming to you as somebody who has finally and officially completed A Court of Thorns and Roses. I decided to not do an update at the halfway point because this video is already very long and I knew I was going to have a lot to say, so I didn't want to prolong it any further than necessary. So I have finished the entirety of A Court of Thorns and Roses. I read it in I think 72 hours, which is good for me. That's fast for me, especially a book of this length. And I think I'm going to have a lot to say. I don't really know where to begin. I think I'm going to start at the most negative end, and then I can end at the most positive end, so it gets more positive as it goes. How does that sound to you all? So my most negative thoughts about this book are as follows. I think the writing is bad, which is what had kept me from reading this, because I knew I was going to have problems with it. Specifically, I am bothered by a lot of her sentence structure is inexplainable to me. I will read a couple of examples of the specifically what I mean that bothers me in a second. But the other thing about the writing that really frustrates me is the world building is very sterile. I would describe it as very sterile and just sort of bland in a lot of ways. I will put a picture on screen right now of the map. That is a huge example of what bothers me about the world building. It just is so lazy. This map is the laziest map, I think, humanly possible that you could possibly make. It's literally just England, and it's split up with straight lines, which is insane. If there was a lore reason, I would be okay with it maybe, but there's not. At least not in this first book. They're just straight lines, and the world is split up like this. That's kind of what I mean. It's that's so lazy. Some other things, like the name of the evil person's lair being just under the mountain. I had heard that and I thought it was oh yeah, that's just what we're calling it. But that's what it has capital U, capital M. She lives in a place under the mountain. Just name the mountain. Just name the mountain and say she lives under the mountain name. Those are the really, really lazy choices to me. And I think that's kind of sad. Those are really simple things that could add just a little bit of depth and flavor to this story, in my opinion. I'm going to read just a couple sentences that are not in themselves particularly egregious, but it's the sort of incessant use of sentences in this structure that bothers me in this book. Here's an example of one of the types of sentences that really bother me in this book. I cleared my throat and said, "What manner of fairies prowl the woods beyond this gate, if the bogue isn't the worst of them? What was that thing?" What I meant to ask was, what would have tormented and eaten me? Who are you to be so powerful that they pose no threat to you? This is a very common device that she uses where Feyre says one thing, and to me it's very clear the broader implications of what she means. The italicized thoughts where she reiterates word for word and spells out what she's thinking, that really is very frustrating to me. Having italicized thoughts in a book that's written in first person already is troublesome to me. It's already all her thoughts. So including italicized, specific thoughts from her, and it's used more than I would like. Maybe once or twice I would let it go, but it happens a lot, and that bothers me. Okay, I've got 3 examples. So my second example is the following. I admire your balls, Feyre, I really do. Or maybe it's stupidity. But since Tam won't gut you, which was my first choice, you're stuck here. I think that one's obvious what bothers me. I think in general, it's sort of this very modern lingo kind of vibe. I admire your balls. And that is not the only time someone admires Feyre's balls in this book. It happens more than once where her balls are admired. I just don't it takes me out of reading a fantasy book when they're talking with really modern language. If it was, I know, for example, her other series, Crescent City, takes place in a city fantasy book. I could accept it. They're living in a city. Okay. But in this, we're living in this very mystical ancient realm. And why are they talking like that? Yeah, that's troublesome to me. It just takes me out of it. And I would appreciate, I feel tonally it makes more sense for them to talk in a different way. They're these ancient 100-year-old fairies, and they're admiring Feyre's balls. I had seen mention a lot of Sarah J. Maas's obsession with the use of the phrase, "my bowels turned watery." And she does use that 3 times in this book, and every time it made me laugh. That's not necessarily like a modern turn of phrase, but just a turn of phrase that like stands out to you already. And then by the 3rd time you read it, you're like, wow, she's using that again. First time wasn't enough. She had to use that 3 times for sure. That's just a mild nitpick that I was primed for because I had seen it mentioned. So, okay, and my final little nitpick in the writing, I've got just sort of an example paragraph here, and I'm going to read out to you like with the punctuation because it's a part of the problem to me. The halls were silent and empty. Dash. Strange for such a large estate. They'd mentioned others the night before, but I saw and heard no sign of them. A balmy breeze scented with ... hyacinth, I realized. Dash. If only from Elaine's small garden. Dash. Floated down the halls, carrying with it the pleasant chirping of a bunting, a bird I wouldn't hear back home for months. Dash. If I ever heard them at all. That specific paragraph is like really egregious, I think. Just like she constantly interrupts herself with a dash phrase. Or she does a dash, she does a word and then dash and then that same word again as like emphasis. And it's just incessant. That's totally like fine. I think it's fine. I'm not like, I don't have an English degree. I've got an engineering degree, so I'm not like the person to ask. But I think it's a fine use of a dash. I don't think it's grammatically incorrect. It's just that having it happen, I feel like almost every single page is like, it's incessant. And if you can't find another way to like emphasize something, there's got to be a more creative way to emphasize. I'm just realizing now, like, my hair is crazy up there. So that's my most specifically negative thought about this book, is the writing is pretty subpar. It's nothing special, I guess I would say. The specific sentence structure is just nothing special to me. And additionally, I think the world building is like a little sterile and dull, but I will have a caveat to that later as I get more positive, I promise. But the only other thing I wanted to just throw out, 2 other mild complaints about the like plot, I guess. The first one is her use of the Fae it's very bland to me. I love like a Fae myth. I love the Fae when they're used like as they are portrayed in popular culture. I'm thinking specifically of, let me just grab it, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. The Fae in this book are so fun. They're so fun and interesting, and the way they're written is so clever, and they're just mischievous. They never say exactly what they mean. They're beautiful in like a weird, creepy way, and they're constantly scheming. They're constantly up to something. That's the kind of Fae that I find very enjoyable. I can understand this book's not for everybody. It's gigantic and has page-long footnotes. It's its own beast, certainly. But I think that's what I picture when I think of Fae. This or Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, I think also has a decent representation. I just really prefer them. And I wish she had just sort of almost come up with her own term to make them something else, so that I wasn't spending the whole time thinking, God, I wish I was reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And then my final like major complaint is about the use of the Beauty and the Beast storyline. I think I don't know how much of an inspiration it was for her, but I just feel like she kind of skirted the heart of Beauty and the Beast, which is that Belle falls in love with the Beast for who he is on the inside fully, because he's an insane looking beast and she is a very gentle, tender person who like is able to look past his exterior appearance and see inside to fall in love with this man. But from the beginning, Tamlin is described as hot. He's hot throughout this whole book. He's hot even though she can't see his face and she's like a little scared of him. She's constantly talking about his tanned, muscly forearms. Just kind of gets rid of the heart of Beauty and the Beast to me if she's falling in love with him and he's also hot. You know what I mean? My first compliment is I like Feyre. I think she's nice. She's just the right balance of interesting and bland. Like, she's interesting enough that you want to root for her. She's very nice and she is doing the best for everyone. She's like sort of self-sacrificing, probably to a bad extent, but she's self-sacrificing. She's nice. She has interests. But she's also bland enough that you can like self-insert into her a little bit, which is a perfect blend for your main character. I think that a fully formed human with wants and desires and interests, and she's a woman who is given a chance to explore her sexuality, be sexual if she wants, and choose a lover. So I definitely see the appeal for women reading this book. While I don't think that Feyre is perfect, I wouldn't describe it as a feminist tale by any means. It's still good to see a fully formed, fully realized woman at the heart of a fantasy story, and I can see why that has spoken to so many women. My other major compliment is that it's fun. It's fun to read. There's something very good about the vibes. It just feels like somewhere you want to go hang out. The world she builds, while I did kind of give her a hard time for the world building, I don't think it's incredibly well thought out. She still like had a very clear vision in her mind and she executed it really well. And even though we only see the spring court and under the mountain, I guess, in this book, I know that there's some like immaculate vibes later on in the night court that I am interested in continuing reading for that alone, because she does an excellent job executing just sort of the vibes and getting Feyre out of sort of a toxic situation, arguably into a new toxic situation, but she's still getting to sort of relax and find herself in this really beautiful, wonderful environment in a way that is really nice. It's nice to read. It's fun to read about her rediscovering her love for painting and being in such a beautiful place that it inspires you to paint. Additionally to just sort of the overall environment vibes, the other good vibes are, I think that Sarah J. Maas does a really wonderful job of writing just like a good friendship. I already know that Tamlin isn't like end game, but the time she spends hanging out with Tamlin and Lucien, I don't want to say it the way that you're not thinking it because I know how jarring that can be as a reader. But the time she spends with them it's really fun. It makes you like wish you were hanging out in a grass field with your best friends. They tease each other, they give each other a hard time, and it's in a very wholesome kind of loving way. And I know that it gets even better later on because she develops a different friend group in later books. And I can just imagine just like it feels safe and cozy to read about them hanging out together. And I like that. I think that she did a really good job of that. So overall, I absolutely powered through this book. I read it so fast. I was finding myself like wanting to just sit down and read instead of doing like literally anything else, which is crazy for me because I read a lot, but I don't always feel that way, like where I want to just sort of push aside all my responsibilities and read. And I wasn't even liking the writing, which is usually what I read for. So people love to like bash on stuff that's popular because I guess, I don't know, we hate women or whatever. But this book is fun. It's really fun. I had a good time. Certainly not the best fantasy book I've read, but it's a really good time. I just remembered actually one other thing I do want to mention that is a negative. It's minor, I think, but I think it might become more of a problem in later books. There's only one explicitly smutty scene in this book, and I know that it gets a little worse later on. This one's a lot more like of a slow build, I think. I did not like how this one was written. I very rarely am into a smut scene, but this one I really didn't like. And there's just sort of this usage of terms like purr, growl, hiss, and using male and female, which I get that she's like promoting this sort of animalistic feeling that is supposed to be hot, but to me it just makes me really uncomfortable. Like, it's one thing to read about a man growling, and it's another thing to picture a man actually growling. I would be a little more forgiving of it if it was just the Fae who were doing these things. Like, if only the Fae growled. I guess, you can suspend your disbelief there like a fantasy creature. But Feyre is also, she at least once purrs, or she wants to purr. And she's a human woman. She's a human woman. I'm a human woman. I don't even know how I would go about purring if I was so inclined. And she also refers to them as like males and females. And that's really strange to me. That's like, it's giving incel a little bit. So overall, I think those are my main thoughts. I feel like I could talk about this all day. I'm just like really fascinated by this as like a cultural impact story. The way it has impacted the reading world and the publishing industry, I think is fascinating. And say what you will about the writing in these books, she has found a way to really capture the attention of a very large audience. And that means there's something in these books that is enjoyable, and I enjoyed it. If you're interested in a complex female character in your fantasy book, though, I've got to say, read the Live Ship Traders instead. Just read the Live Ship Traders instead. Honestly, I'm getting wistful just thinking about it. I mean, that is a whole cast of complex female characters. Or an additional shout out to The Locked Tomb, which is just like my favorite fantasy series ever. So, all right, to give my final rating, I would say this is a solid 4 on the enjoyment scale for me. I don't think it's a full 5. I have a feeling if I do decide to read the second one, that one could be a full 5 enjoyment for me, potentially, because this one definitely had a little bit of a lull. After Feyre first arrives at the Spring Court, there's like 100 pages of a whole lot of nothing, I think, where she is like just repeating the same questions, wondering the same things, feeling the same things, and it gets a little bit dull in the middle there. But outside of those 100 pages, I think it's really fun, and even in those 100 pages, the vibes are still pretty nice. So a solid 4 on the enjoyment scale, and I think I would put it at a 2 on the excellence scale. I reserve a 1 on excellence for a book that is like actively harmful in some way or problematic, which this one I don't think really ever goes that low. So a simple 2 to me basically just means it is not harmful, but just like not well done. And I'm sorry to say it. At least just like as the craft of writing goes specifically. I would say it's not an incredible achievement in that sense, though she does certainly achieve incredible things with the reach of her audience. So you got to hand it to her. I think that's my wrap up on A Court of Thorns and Roses. I would love, if I would chat about it in the comments if you think that I said anything completely unfair. I know there is a huge following of this book, so I tried to be pretty balanced in my review of it, and hopefully I did a good job. I think that's where I'm going to wrap up this video. I don't want to do another book right now, I don't think, so let's do a quick wrap up. First, we had Poisonwood Bible, Barbara Kingsolver. I thought this was really, really good. It's really well done. It's very nuanced. It's very thoughtful. And it is beautifully written. I highly recommend. Next up, I put down and did not finish The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. Again, not necessarily out of a huge dislike of the book, so much as just to where I am right now. I had read too many historical fiction books in a row that it felt pretty bland, like I had just read it before. And I might stand by that as my long-term review of it. I don't know if I'm really thinking about getting around to it, so I might get rid of it because I feel like I'm turning a corner on my historical fiction enjoyment where I really want to read something unique and creative and unusual, and for me this was really not achieving that. I was just like, wow, we're really just reading about white people in a manor, which I'm a little tired of. I do love books like that in general, but I'm getting a little burnt out on it. So maybe in like 3-4 years time, if I have read enough insanity between now and then, it'll feel nice to return to. And finally, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I had a surprisingly good time. I had been putting it off because I thought I would hate it, and I wouldn't say I hated it fully. I would even consider reading the second book because I really do want to see how she handles dumping Tamlin in favor of Rhysand. I think that's hilarious. I think that's awesome. I think that's iconic, and I would really like to read it because I think that in general is just a great thing to do in your fantasy book about a 19-year-old girl. Like, don't let her end up with the very first guy she sees. Let's let her explore a little. Don't love that she ends up with the very second guy, but you know. Thank you so much for watching. I had a really great time making this video, and I will definitely be doing this again. I actually really appreciated having the jar tell me what to do. It made it really easy to finish books that I had been putting off. I guess I'm only like 60% success rate on that, but still. I've had a great time today, so thanks for hanging out with me, and let's keep reading.